Welcome. Happy Thursday. Thank you so much for joining us live. I'm so excited to kick off this conversation with Annie and Lori from UTEP. We're going to be talking about the intersection of culture, confidence, and coaching. And they've really unlocked a beautiful correlation between how people development is intersecting with the advancement team and how that's transforming staff retention, culture in the workplace, but ultimately how that's also impacting downstream activities in how the team is engaging with donors and raising funds for the university. And so I'm really excited to dive into what are the core challenges that sent them on this journey? How are they navigating it today? Exploring like what this looks like in grounded in reality day to day and share some of the results that they're seeing in real time. So, really excited that you all are here. Annie, Lori, I'd love to kick it to you before we dive into the conversation to quickly introduce yourselves.
Yeah. Hey, y'all. My name is Annie Quaddy. I'm our Associate Vice President of Strategy and Engagement at UTEP, which means I oversee our integrated advancement or engagement team. For us, that includes strategic communications and annual giving, as well as alumni programming and event, all being combined together into integrated engagement. And then my primary focus is on our strategic talent management program as well.
Hey y'all, my name is Lori Cook and I am the Associate Vice President for Development here at UTEP. And my team is the fundraising arm, everything from leadership, annual giving, major gifts, all the way up, as well as our alumni engagement team.
Amazing, amazing. And throughout the conversation today, I just want everyone to know that please introduce yourselves, engage in the chat. If you have questions or want us to pause on something or dive down the rabbit hole into Wonderland a bit deeper on a topic that we're talking about, would love to go there. So know that this is an open forum, would love to hear your voice. So chime in the chat, let us know where you're calling in from. And yeah, we're happy to keep this conversation as fluid and organic as possible as well. So very excited. I think to start and to tee us off, I think it would be really helpful if we could just talk about some of the current challenges that you're seeing, especially as it comes to the current state of the job market and that like baseline correlation to why people development is so critical to fund development.
Yeah, I can chime in there to start. I think during COVID, we all thought that the job market in the landscape was changing. But as time has progressed, retention continues to be such a critical factor for so many advancement shops. With AI coming into play, it's gotten even weirder out there in the job market. So if you are a job seeker, it is hard to find jobs and it's hard to get in for interviews because you are fighting with, especially if it's a remote or somewhat flexible role, hundreds of applicants coming in. On the
Mm-hmm.
flip side, you have shops that are starting to integrate AI into their acquisition tracking systems and have that be even harder to get through the system into a hiring manager's hands in the first place. And so it's really hard on both sides of the table right now in the job market. But the thing that has remained true over the last, I'd say, 5, 7, maybe even longer, has been that retention is an advancement shop's strategic lever to hold on to and is gold for them, not only in staff retention and not having to replace teammates, but also from a fundraising perspective. We know that
Mm-hmm.
when fundraisers stay at an advancement shop, they're going to raise more money over time. We know that EAB tells us it's about $163,000 to replace a fundraiser when they leave. And then on
Wow.
top of that, yeah, and on top of that, if they leave during a campaign, you're looking at about $3 million in revenue lost from the relationships that fundraiser had as well. So those are some of the numbers that have been put around the importance of retention.
Wow. Yeah. So that really paints a powerful picture in terms of what's at stake. And I think something else that I know it's often talked about in our sector and in our industry, but also just like the pressure, the rate of burnout, the
Yeah.
high turnover rates that we do see coming from fundraisers and advancement teams is alarming.
Yeah.
Again, like knowing that, like how that impacts our donor base, how that relates to cost is extremely powerful and insightful. I think Lori, on your side, on the advancement side, like how are you seeing that culture as a differentiator in building a world-class development team, retaining staff longer term, raising more funds over time?
Yeah, honestly, I think culture is going to be key moving forward for any advancement shop to really keep an eye on. I think that if you look at the development landscape right now, there are a lot of development openings across the country, right? You can really, if you're a fundraiser, you can take a look and you can go anywhere and you can fundraise for some really meaningful places. I think once you get into those places, how good of a fit it is becomes really important, right? So shops have to be really thoughtful about the culture that they're building within the development officers. How are we providing them professional development opportunities? How are we providing them a psychologically safe space to grow, especially for brand new fundraisers? I think that's so critical that they have the space and the grace to grow into the role in a really meaningful way. And I think having the culture set the tone for having high expectations, having those high performance expectations, but also having a place to really just be authentic, be yourself, and be the best fundraiser that you can be. I think that's what a great culture is. And I think that's going to continue to set development shops apart.
That's great input. I'm curious, like on a more practical level, when you think about how you're supporting your team to exist and execute with psychological safety in a high pressure environment, how are you balancing that need to hit fundraising goals alongside creating that healthy environment?
That's a $1 million question. But I think we're all still figuring it out in so many different ways, right? Because I think every team is different, every shop is different, and there are different fundraising expectations across the board, right? So for me, I just think it's really important to find the right balance of accountability as well as empathy, because at the end of the day, first and foremost, we're all people. We all have lives outside of the work that we do at our incredible institutions. But also, I think having a really deep connection to the mission of the institution is really important, right? And here at UTEP, our mission is critical to everything that we do, and so making sure that the team is locked in and connected to that mission, that they understand the impact of their work. It's not just about raising money, right? It's about what that
Mm-hmm.
money does, and so making sure that as successful as they can be in that work, it's my job to support them to that, and it's our job as an advancement team to make sure that we're doing the best that we can on behalf of the institution.
And I'm curious how I think like you all have implemented, and I want to talk about this at a high level. You all have implemented tools and systems to be able to curate and strengthen the ability to create human connection, to empathize. And it's been grounded in this power of practicing donor conversations. A lot of what we talk about here at Practivated is I think you often hear a tagline in our industry, which is, especially when you think about technology, I think you hear the broad sweeping tagline that technology and AI and systems will help you close the gap between insights and action. I feel like that's a billboard that I see everywhere. And I think as a fundraiser myself for 12 plus years, I take a step back and I think the thing that I'm reminded of, especially you were talking about AI, Annie, like in this age of AI, there is actually something so unique to our sector that is irreplaceable
Yeah.
by technology. And it's what you're talking about, Lori. It is this power of human connection, human relationship building, the connection to mission, empathy and understanding and care. And you all have unlocked an ability to help really train your teams in order to do that. So I would just wonder, and anyone take it from here, but I'd be really curious to hear about your perspective on how does the power of practicing and coaching fundraisers to strengthen those human skill sets play into your strategy, your culture, your environment?
Yeah. I'll chime in first real quick, Lori, and then you can talk a little bit more day to day. I think Lori and I probably came up as fundraisers around the same time. And back then, there wasn't as much emphasis on this idea of coaching and role playing. I think I went to a single conference where it was maybe 2 days, and of that 2 days, maybe 2 hours of it was spent on role playing with your colleagues who were attending the conference to practice donor conversations. After that, I was maybe lucky to get one training trip with my manager and then was like, good luck, figure it out, go raise money, here's your metrics. And it's a little bit of drinking out of a fire hose if that is your first experience with fundraising. And I think
Mm-hmm.
right now, as we especially are thinking about how do we creatively recruit, how do we think about bringing in diverse populations into our fundraising teams as well, not only hiring from the same like tried and true backgrounds. Those are all components where you can't just apply that good luck, figure it out mentality when it comes to onboarding and training them if you want them to be successful, if you want them to stay in the role. So Lori, I'll let you jump in there.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience as Annie being onboarded. I think the only time I ever had the opportunity to really do like practice conversations was if I was sent to an actual training. And that was great. It was really helpful. But then you come back and you get bogged down in day to day doing the actual work. And when I started here at UTEP, within my first 6 months, we kind of had a retreat with the staff, and mock conversations were part of that. And I received so much positive feedback from the team that it really helped them to be able to have those conversations, even though it's your colleagues and you know them. That kind of adds this level of like maybe just a little bit more insecurity, right? Because these are the people that you work with all the time. But it was like one of the top things that I was asked for my teams, like, can we do that again? Can we do the mock conversations? And so I knew it was something that was really helpful for them. But then for me personally, it became a bandwidth issue of trying to set up time in either our standing meetings that we're doing these conversations or making sure that they're doing them on their own time with each other. And so it wasn't, even though I knew how helpful it was going to be for them, it wasn't something that was super feasible for me to incorporate into our day-to-day without some additional tools, which now Practivated has given us a really great tool to help our fundraisers be able to leverage those mock conversations.
Amazing. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is a one-time retreat or limited time professional development experience isn't meeting the broad needs of the team, and there's more needed consistency and scalability, especially as you onboard new people over time, to institute, I guess what I would call like behavior change and fundraiser skill development. Yeah.
Yeah, it happens to all of us, right? We go to a conference or we go to some kind of professional development opportunity and you soak all of that up and you have the best of intentions for going back home and implementing everything. And then it doesn't always happen, right? So being able to do that more consistently is certainly important for just that continued growth of fundraisers.
Amazing. So I'd love to peel the layers back a bit on how you've actually implemented that consistent like training muscle, the a bit like creating space where your team can fail, make mistakes, learn, grow, stretch, again, like in a safe environment. Like it would love to hear about how does Practivated fit into your day-to-day through that perspective? What does that look like?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different for everybody on our team. I would say that our fundraisers, we have a diverse group of folks who have a variety of experience, right? And so I think it's been most helpful for our newer fundraisers that we're onboarding. And I really encourage those individuals to do some calendar blocking where they are utilizing Practivated for 30 minutes once a week to just have mock conversations, to go through and prepare for outreach, to prepare for engagement. And that's been really helpful because then when I have my one-on-one with them, we can recap those conversations and I get to hear a little bit more about their experience in that very safe environment, right? Prior to having this tool, all of our onboarding was just shadow visits, which is great. They're out, they're really seeing it happen in real time. But if you have a brand new development officer that you're putting in front of a donor for the first time and they maybe misstate something, it can be really intimidating. It can be really scary, right? It feels like you messed up. Whereas with a separate tool, they're able to have those conversations, make those mistakes, and then say, oh, okay, that's not how I should have said that. Or, okay, now I know how to better phrase that. And so it's been really helpful for that onboarding perspective. And it's just become part of the onboarding process for the new DOs to really just dive in. They're getting all of their onboarding, doing their shadowing with other development officers, but also doing their own sessions with Practivated to have those conversations. And I think the other thing that I've seen that it's been really helpful for is, I think as development officers, we sometimes walk into conversations and we're thinking like, gosh, I hope the donor does not ask me this question, or gosh, I really don't want to talk about this. I really hope they don't bring it up. And so what Practivated has also done is it's helped us better prepare for some of those hard conversations, right? Whether it's a donor saying, why are you calling me? Or why should I take this visit? To what's going on at the university. We saw this in the news, or we saw this online, what's happening. It's given us a platform to have some practice around those conversations so that we as fundraisers are more confident walking into those conversations without having to just be on the spot in the actual meeting. And so it's just become part of, I would say, weekly development for the development
Amazing.
officers. And again, they're going to get out of it what they put into it. We have some development officers that don't really engage with it as much, but we have our newer ones that really embrace it, and it's just become part of onboarding.
Yeah, and something, if I could put you on the spot a little bit, something you shared with me the other week was as the person leading and managing the team, you're balancing a lot of different priorities. You have your own gift pipeline and donor portfolio that you're managing, and then you're also working to try to steward the team. And you landed on something that I thought was really powerful, and you talked about this level of guilt that was associated with having the desire but not having the bandwidth or capacity to support or manage your team. And I'm really curious, like, how has that changed since introducing a platform that allows your team to have a safe space where they can practice donor conversations and talk with an AI fundraising coach, where they can do objection handling and navigate all of this nuance around the questions that they're afraid to be asked, for example? Like, how has that changed your day to day and how you're showing up as a manager?
It's been a total game changer, honestly. As you said, I think a lot of fundraising managers deal with a little bit of that guilt, right? You have your portfolio, you have administrative responsibilities, you have management responsibilities, and it's one thing that I think your team always wants more of is time. They just want to talk strategy, or they need questions answered. And so I was certainly feeling a lot of guilt about not always being available for them. I think having a tool with Tivi, our coach, that they can talk through different donor conversations with. They can get feedback in an instant, right? So they don't have to look at my calendar and try to catch me in between meetings to have these conversations. They have something on tap that they can activate at any point to ask questions, to give donor scenarios, to help them craft an email, and or to have a mock conversation that helps them. And so I feel like for me, it's given me an opportunity to provide them with a tool that helps them on demand versus trying to always be accessible when they need it the most.
Amazing. Amazing. And I'm curious, Annie, what do you see from the other side of the fence in terms of, are there any patterns or shifts in culture and team employee satisfaction? I'm just curious, like, from your perspective, as like this has been implemented in a scalable way, what are your first big impressions?
Not too dissimilar from what Lori said about the guilt component. The other, like, putting on the talent side of my hat and thinking about how we are supporting the entire team. We've always known that an employee's experience with their manager is so critical to employee engagement, and having access to ongoing growth opportunities is so critical for employee engagement. And we're a talent team of 1.5. And we can only do so much when we also need to recruit, and we also need to do all these other things. And not having the bandwidth to come up with our own in-house fundraising training and things of that sort has been great, because this allows us to do that at scale at a really personalized and individual level that any other kind of either in-house or big consulting group training wouldn't be able to give that amount of dedicated time one-on-one. And so it's a game changer to be able to provide that to everyone. I don't have set numbers on employee
Yeah.
engagement at this point. We're not in that part of the cycle yet. I am intrigued to see if we follow the Gallup engagement survey, and one of the items on the Q12 is about having access to growth opportunities. And so it'll be interesting to see if that number changes year over year for us now that we have a tool like Practivated on board.
Nice. Very nice. I think, Lori, can you share about in terms of new employee onboarding, in terms of having access to real-time coaching and development opportunities? Like, what are you seeing internally on your team in terms of as a new fundraiser ramps? Like, what's the impact of that experience in terms of like their time to impact?
Yeah, so I'm actually excited to share this data. I was able to look specifically at our leadership annual giving officer position, and we had a leadership annual giving officer that we onboarded when we did not have Practivated versus two that we have onboarded utilizing Practivated and really integrating it into their onboarding. And what I'm seeing is that on average, there's a 280% increase in outreach and donor engagement within their first 30 days of a new fiscal year. And so that's really exciting
That's
that we're
amazing.
able to get them ramped up and just more ready for that outreach and engagement, utilizing this tool and just building that confidence. I think that's so important in new fundraisers, right? To just get them ready for a donor conversation. It can feel overwhelming, it can feel intimidating, it can feel a little bit scared. And so giving them a platform where they can just engage, have that initial conversation, even if it doesn't go the exact same way in an actual donor call, they have this opportunity to engage in a way that's going to be similar so that they walk in feeling like, okay, I can do this. I know what to do.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's incredible. Just like the reducing the inertia, that barrier to entry to pick up the phone, sit the meeting, engage in the conversation. Like I feel like that's half the barrier, especially when you're in a new environment, you've joined a new university, or like you said earlier, you're also in a space where you're maybe inviting people with other skill sets, other backgrounds that might be new to this. I think so. Just that the ability to overcome the inertia feels really powerful.
Yeah. And Brian, to piggyback off of what Lori just said about the confidence thing, that can really only come about by doing. You can
Mm,
sit through a presentation or a conference and theoretically hear all about it, but the only way that you are going to actually get confident in being able to have those donor conversations is by having conversations. And like this allows our fundraisers to really do that at a scalable as much or as little as they want to feel that confidence.
yeah. I'm even thinking back to like my early days as a fundraiser, and I actually got my start in international development and humanitarian aid, so completely different sector, but we always had like very time sensitive, highly urgent opportunities to give. Like they were just plentiful all the time. And I feel like the thing that got me on the phone was always urgency. It was almost as if I didn't have a choice. It's, oh my gosh, if I
Yeah.
don't pick up the phone today, and if we don't raise this much money in the next 2 weeks or the next month, like these people, these programs will be impacted. And
Yeah.
advancement teams do a great job of creating seasonality, rhythms, driving urgency. But I imagine a world where I kind of question to myself, if I'm being honest, like how much more effective would I have been if I was acting out of a place of
Mm.
confidence as
Yeah.
opposed to acting solely out of a place of raw urgency? And I just feel like I would have been so much better positioned to have
Yeah.
that extra layer. So I'm just like putting myself in the shoes of your team and what they're experiencing day to day.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious. I want to try something and put us on the spot a little bit.
Okay.
Because personally, I'm such a visual, experiential learner, and I think for those tuning in, I just really quickly in 2 minutes or less, I just want to ground what we're talking about in like an experiential representation
Mm.
of the coaching that we're talking about. So what I want to do is I actually want to introduce Tivy, who is our AI fundraising coach. And like this is totally live. This is not pre-prepped. I didn't even tell Lori that I was going to do this. But I'm curious,
Oh,
Lori, I'm going to share my screen in a sec, but can you tell me or just walk me through, and I'm going to take a couple notes. Can you walk me through like a real-time challenge or scenario that like a member or members of your team are navigating with donors today?
yeah, so I think one of the challenges that we have is that we have a lot of donors who have maybe made a gift within the last 10, 15 years and have not heard from the university since. And so we get quite a bit of questions about, why am I hearing from you now?
Okay, amazing. So the core question is, why am I hearing from you now? Okay, let's try this. I'm going to try my bet to see if I can articulate the challenge that you've presented here appropriately. So I'm going to introduce everyone to Tivy. I'm going to share my sound so that you can hear what I'm hearing on my end. And I would like to introduce you to the first ever and only AI fundraising coach. And we're going to start a conversation with Tivy.
Hello, Brian. How are you doing?
Hey, Tivy, I'm doing great. I am actually live right now with the advancement and HR leaders at the University of Texas, El Paso. And we were just talking through some of the challenges that the current advancement team is having. And something that they're facing is they have many donors that have made a gift over the last 10 to 15 years. And they're looking for ways to re engage those donors. But the biggest hurdle that they're looking to challenge is how do they respond to the burning question that they're anticipating getting from the other end of the line, which is, why are you calling me now? Can you help us think through how we can re engage donors that may have given years and years ago and how we face this question?
Absolutely, Brian. That why are you calling me now? Question is a gold mine, not a trap, if you reframe it as an opportunity to show genuine curiosity and care. The key is to flip the focus from, we want something from you, to we've been thinking about you and wanted to reconnect. For instance, a natural, human-centered opener might sound like, I was looking through some generous supporters from over the years, and your name popped up. I realized it's been a while since we last connected, and I'd really love to hear what's mattered most to you since then. This doesn't just preempt the question. It answers it with warmth, gratitude, and relevance. The goal isn't to leap into an ask, but to spark a real conversation that honors their past giving and opens the door to new alignment. What would it feel like?
Brian, I think you might have froze. I know we're getting some weather out east where Brian is located, so that might be what's going on there. But I think the thing that I was so impressed by with Tivi in the first place was how more realistic it sounds compared to some of the other AI platforms that I've seen out there. And I think that was a great example of it. So I'm sure Brian will be right back. But Lori, what did you think of how Tivi did?
Yeah, fantastic. I think one of the things that I was really impressed with and something that was really important to me was the tone around the feedback too. I think something that I'm really mindful of is, with fundraising, we have metrics, we have goals, and sometimes those can feel really punitive, right? And so
Yeah.
something I feel so strongly about is always infusing positivity and energy into everything that we do. And so when I heard Tivi and when I heard those conversations, welcome back, Brian.
I think my Wi-Fi crashed.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you. I was in a panic on this end of the line, and
No worries.
I'm not sure when I cut out, but Tivy stopped talking, and I was like, "This is unusual." And then I realized that you all were frozen. So thank you.
All
I
good.
I live in Maine. We're in the middle of a big thunderstorm, and
Yeah.
my Wi-Fi hiccuped. So please continue without me. You clearly don't need me here.
We
We
were just
were
debriefing what we were hearing from Tiffy.
to be. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
Go ahead
So
and finish up, Lori.
yeah, just the positive approach, right? And I noticed that not only in the coaching, but even with the feedback from the mock conversations, it was always focused on, hey, you did this really well. Here's an opportunity, right? Like this is something that you did that was fantastic. Here's an area where you needed a little bit more engagement. And so it wasn't ever, here's everything you need to do to be better, and or something that was really harsh. It didn't come off that way. It felt very warm, it felt very positive, and it felt very objective as well, which I think is something that's really important.
Hmm. I'm jumping in, but I'm also wondering something that's powerful that you've emphasized as well in our conversations is that the third party, we could call it the third party AI coach, has allowed for forms of feedback that feel more democratic. Can you talk about how the dynamic of feedback and growth development on your team has changed? And Annie, you might even have input here as well, just from the HR perspective.
Sure. I'll let Lori go first.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just nice to have for the development team to have a platform where they are getting additional feedback in a way that might resonate more with them. I think that when you're sitting down and you're talking to your manager, there's always going to be a power dynamic, right? And so if your manager is telling you, hey, I think you could change this, or you might be able to do this better or different, right? That can feel a little bit intimidating. But I also think that as managers and as humans, we're bringing our own personal bias to conversations, right? And so I think it can be hard for me sometimes to think, okay, I wouldn't have said it that way, right? And so I think that what Practivated does is it also gives the development officers an opportunity to hear feedback that is totally objective, right? Completely neutral, and in a way that it doesn't feel as intimidating as coming from your manager, from your supervisor. And then I think too, it also provides development officers a way to hear feedback in a different way too. I know we didn't get to see this when you go through coaching with Tivi. It also gives you an outline of your takeaways. And so being able to refer back to that later is really helpful as a tool to be like, I know that this was a really good conversation, or this was a really good example. How did they say that again? Or how did, what exactly was I supposed to do? And so that's just a really helpful tool, like that incorporates the feedback that development officers can refer back to. Annie?
Yeah, it's almost this unintentional when you are the fundraising manager using it with your team, it's almost this unintentional, like teaching you to be a better coach too, with noticing how Tivi delivers that feedback in a psychologically safe and positive way. But the other thing that I would mention about this is just it increases opportunities to reduce bias in the feedback as well, which as HR and talent managers is something that we're always thinking about. I was just in a conversation with some of my colleagues on the talent side, and we were talking about performance management and how hard it can be to feel like performance management is being applied equally across a division, and having something like this where it's a third party giving some objective feedback as opposed to the very personal, that's not how I would do it, so I'm gonna say that you're doing it wrong. That is a really positive thing to have to reduce some of those biases.
Incredible. And I'm curious, I think one of the things that feels powerful to me is with the use of a platform like Practivated, it's also giving you insights across core metrics that are actually measurable for maybe the first time. And I'm curious, there's 16 core data points that we track, but I'm just curious to hear from you, Lori, what are the data points that are most helpful for you to just garner an understanding of how your team's performing?
Yeah, I'm definitely looking at how they're being active listeners in the conversation and how they're responding to the information that the donor is giving them in that conversation. And then, two, how they are transitioning the conversation to giving. And so that's really important for me is understanding, okay, how does that transition look? Does it feel natural? Does it feel forced? Are they connecting to a passion that the donor shared earlier? Are we picking up on those cues? I think those are the things that I'm looking broadly at, and then utilizing that to be able to say, okay, I think that this is something that we can work on. Or I noticed that this development officer does this really well. Can we talk about that at a team meeting and use it as an example to make sure that everybody hears it and then is able to personalize it to what works best for them?
Yeah, which historically couldn't really be tracked in any way, shape, or form. At times, as a leadership team, we've thought about looking at, do you see how many proposals were presented versus how many closed? And is that your indicator as to how successfully a fundraiser is moving the conversation to money or connecting those dots? But you really don't know, because that's a metric that doesn't have any of that substance or nuance to it. It's just numbers. And so this provides more of that grounded, objective feedback around those more nuanced and soft skill like components to the art of fundraising, if we will. That's really important.
And it might be too soon to tell. I'd be curious to maybe revisit this over time, but do you have any initial impressions on like how this is having a downstream impact on donors directly? Are you able to parse through the ability to create more connection, be empathetic, hyper personal, like those kind of those growth areas that you're seeing for your team? How are donors responding?
It's a great question. I do think it's a little bit too early to tell, but I think the most immediate impact that I've seen is more from the development officers and that confidence. And to me, if I know that they're walking out of that meeting confident, I feel better that they walked into it a little bit more confident as well. And so I'm optimistic that our donors are seeing a higher caliber of development officer earlier in a development officer's tenure. And that's something that I'm really excited about.
Amazing. Amazing. Real quick, I know we only have a couple minutes left, and I think I'll plant the seed for everybody tuning in. If anyone has questions, areas within Lori and Annie's approach, their strategy, their culture, please drop a question in the chat. We would love to bubble it up before we wrap up here in a few minutes. I would just be curious. Like, I just love how you all have embraced the opportunity to try something different, to innovate, to trust and take the leap on something that prioritizes like the urgent need to hit our funding goals while balancing out the need to like steward and take care of and foster a team of people that feel, like we've said this over and over, psychologically safe, cared for. So I just want to say, first of all, thank you for the efforts that you've both put in to do that. And I love that it's having an impact on your team, on your donors, on the school. But I'm curious, because you're on the front lines and on the forefront of this, how do you see the future of advancement shifting because of turns in the tides like this? How do you see fundraiser development evolving over time?
I'll chime in on the talent side from an acquisition standpoint, knowing that we have tools where we can recruit from transferable skills, recruit earlier right out of college, like to be able to feel really confident in our bandwidth and ability to onboard well and then retain those fundraisers at an institution. That feels really great to me, to be able to really truly build our team.
I think on my end, being able to provide more professional development opportunities by leveraging AI and other technology tools as our development team continues to grow, it's really not feasible to send them all to a conference or even to bring them all in. And then as many universities thinking about budget cuts, professional development is sometimes one of those areas that isn't always a top priority. And so being able to find ways that we can continue to support our team, give them a tool in their tool belt that they can really lean into and learn with and from. I think that's really important to overall just providing them support, continuing to build that culture and really setting our team apart when we're thinking about recruiting talent, when we're thinking about retaining our folks. The more tools that we're able to leverage like this, the better off we're going to be.
Incredible. Great final word for the conversation. I want to make an invitation to everybody here on the call. We here at Practivated, we're actually have just opened up, and there'll be an opportunity to participate over the course of the next 30 days. If anyone is interested, I'm going to share my screen here. We are actually opening up a higher education cohort where we're giving access to the platform. And we are also going to be convening managers specifically on a monthly basis for 6 months to create cross collaboration and continued development opportunities for managers and their teams. So I'm going to drop a link here in the chat. We have a pamphlet and booklet that goes through all of the details for the higher education manager cohort. But if folks are interested, we would love to have a conversation with you to help you figure out how to integrate AI coaching and professional development into your advancement teams. And Lori, Annie, I just want to say thank you so much. Thanks for the insights. Thanks for giving of your time so generously. And also just want to say that hope you have a great homecoming week. The fact that you gave us time during homecoming speaks volumes. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Thanks
All right,
for
y'all. Till next
Bye.
time.
See ya.
Bye, y'all.